I'm calling the special board meeting to order. Today is Monday, May 4th. May 4th. And we do have a special board meeting planned for today. I am calling the meeting to order, and I am going to ask our superintendent to guide us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, if you would.
Please stand, everybody. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving on to item 1.3, the adoption of today's meeting. We have no amendments, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and there's no action necessary. I'm going to ask Joanne if she can take roll call, please.
Mr. Flores? Ms. Thoreen Ojeda? Mr. Fuentes?
Present.
Mrs. Flores?
Present. Okay. Okay, so now we are moving on to 2.0, public comment. Joanne, do we have any cards today?
No, we do not.
Okay, very good. So we'll be moving on. We are meeting today for our annual board evaluation, and we're very happy to have Gary Rutherford here with us that is going to guide us in this workshop today. Welcome, Mr. Rutherford. Get over to you.
Am I getting picked up? Is that better? Okay. And once we talk a little bit to some personal reflection, we'll talk about how that applies in our work as a governance team. And then from there, we'll do some application and a walk through the handbook. And each year, you'll notice on your current handbook, which should be in front of you, it looks like you guys have done some minor revisions every year. So along the way, we'll see what's missing, what may not reflect your work that can be stated better, and we can make some revisions, and Joanne will help us keep track of any of those. So I titled today, Strong Agreements Equals a Stronger Team. Whenever I meet with Frank and Joanne to begin focusing this session, I always said, so what's happened in the last year? And you guys have had some big events happen in this last year, some top of the newspaper fold type events. Some challenges, you have challenges ahead, you have great opportunities ahead. And I think the reason you guys navigate those waters so well is the fact that you have taken the time to really look deeply at your practice and your work as a governance team to make sure that you're hitting on all cylinders so that when it comes time to apply these agreements, you're on solid ground. So I commend you guys for setting aside the time every year to do this, and we'll try to make it a very meaningful time for you. So strong agreements equals an even stronger team. And the goal is that you set agreements and you operate with fidelity to those agreements. And when you don't, you talk about it and find out why didn't we operate with fidelity to our agreements, and can we, or do we need to take another look at our agreements? The other piece is that it's equally applied, that you're operating cohesively as a board. So do you remember this from last year? You each took the DISC instrument, and got a sense of where your leadership style fell and your approach to life fell. If you remember, there are 4 quadrants: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And you don't have to tell me, but I'll test your memory, see if you remember which quadrant you fell into as your primary. I'm going to tell you in a minute, so you don't have to remember. But if you're a D or an I, you fell into this top half. You tend to be more fast-paced and outspoken as a D or I. If you're a C or S, you tend to be more cautious and reflective. Spoiler alert, I'm an I, which puts me up here in that fast pace. So I have to kind of catch my pace once in a while. Right now, my sister, it's pathetically enough, my sister is my roommate for a while. She's a D, I'm an I. We talk at the same time. So I'll notice when we have a conversation, it's like I'm somehow picking up what she's saying, she's picking up, but we're talking over each other all the time. That's kind of how we're wound. So I need to learn how to dial that back. If you're a C and an S, again, you're more cautious, reflective. Then we go to this half. If you're an I or S, so what I have in common with someone who is steady is we are both accepting and warm. If you're a D, which is the dominant, C, which is conscientious, you're more questioning and skeptical. So let's see, if kind of maybe take a minute and just based on your hunch, and I'll give you a little more information. Well, actually, I gave you a lot more information. I didn't mean to disclose that second half this fast, but there we are. So I'll give you a minute to take a look at the words that describe your quadrant and see if that, I forget, did you take it too, Joanne, last year?
I took it with executive cabinet.
Cabinet took it too. So, I wish I had you guys. I would have plugged you in there too. Do you have any memory of where you fell after a year? You can lie and say you do. We won't know the difference.
I can tell you, Gary.
Yeah. I'm sure you can. So take a minute, read those words, and tell me, does it resonate with you? Do you feel like you got it wrong or they got it wrong? Or does it feel like in general, if you have a default to your personality, do you feel like those words kind of describe where you are? Kind of see, does it make sense to you? So let's put that into practice a bit. So hold on to that. Remember, you have one thing to remember today, that's your letter. You don't have to even remember it for very long. So I want you to reflect on one moment, and it can be in your life as a school board member, as a cabinet member, or as a civilian, when your DISC style really showed up. And then where was a situation you were in where it was counter to your style, but you had to adapt some new skills that may not be your default approach? And before I release you into your reflection time, I'll share my example, which will kind of give you an idea of how it might work. I just finished a search in Manhattan Beach. Very affluent, very entitled community, a lot of CEOs, a lot of entertainment people. Their Ed Foundation for a district of under 5,000 raised $7 million this year. And that's not corporate. They don't have big corporations. That's mostly people writing checks. They expect a return on that investment, let's just say, in many cases. They are going through, as a district, as is often the case, the more affluent you are, they're not a basic aid district, they're a regular ADA-funded district. You know that they are going through miserable budget challenges right now, because that $7 million, which was meant for enrichment, is helping to support the base program. They also have a parcel tax that keeps class size lower. And even with all of that, they're laying off 60 people this year. Because like a lot of districts, when all that COVID money bailed us out and it's gone, the positions didn't go with as fast enough with that loss of funds. I think they were just closing their eyes really tight and hoping for the best. Well, that community, that sound you can hear from Colton is in Manhattan Beach. Because these beloved young teachers who are exceptional received notices this year. Now they're hoping to rescind as many as they can, but they're in that scramble right now, as many districts across our state are. So in that situation, the superintendent's retiring. Community's mad, trust has been broken, we can't believe this is happening to us. We write all these checks, how come you have to, they just don't understand the budget. And they'll say things like, with what I pay in real estate taxes, they don't understand that our allocation isn't based on what they pay in real estate taxes. It's distributed, it's different. So into that setting, we go in to start having community meeting groups. And this called on every bit of my eye. That was the opportunity I had where my disc really showed up. Because listening, conversation, inspiring people that there's a higher goal, communicating, being optimistic about the future are the skills that got me through those sessions where people left feeling like they were heard and understood it was the best of what I could do, of the best of my strengths. Then I worked with the board president, who I loved. Sorry, Joanne, she is a C, like Joanne. Conscientious, detail-oriented, maybe a little skeptical. Show me a bit. Does any of that fit, Joanne? I don't know you that well, but yeah, people around are nodding their heads, so I think maybe that fits a bit. She never found a question she couldn't ask or a detail she couldn't analyze. I'm just the opposite of personality type. So I had to learn when I talked to the board president, if we were going to work well together and she were going to have confidence in my work as a search advisor, I had to care about what she cared about. So all of a sudden, every single word in the leadership profile, I had to analyze. My mom had it, I won't say it crudely, but she had an expression that that person can separate fly poop from pepper. You know, like, no. She said it a little more pithily than that, but you get the idea. There's just not a detail she couldn't furrow into. And I learned every time we talked, I'd start with that. I'd anticipate all the little incremental things she were. And as time went, that kind of fell to the side. Once she had confidence that I cared about the detail, once I didn't send out anything that I didn't read 65 times. Poor Joanne, my PowerPoint I revised 3 times because I even got the initials of the district wrong in a couple of drafts. So I learned. I was very specific. So I had to adapt outside my style in order to be successful. So I want you to take a minute, think about your style, and can you think of a time this year where that style really served you well? And can you think of a time maybe where you had to adapt to a different style with some of the issues? And it could be at home, it could be with family, it could be as a board member, and I'll just give you a little bit of reflection time. And I'll ask a couple brave souls to share out, and it could be staff or board at this point in time. Kim's outstanding. Yeah, good, I'm glad you know. And I forget we're live streaming. So President Tina, if you heard that, with all respect for your work, I somehow doubt she's tuning in, but.
And just a reminder that we are live, and when you speak, please speak into your mic.
You can assign it to your executive assistant, however. You can delegate.
I was ready to do that, so be ready. Dr. Ortiz. I'm playing. I think we're still having problems with the, is Mike, is it?
So maybe I put it closer.
I guess I'll be the mic monitor. this, okay. Are you stalling, Dr. Moran? No, no, no. Dan's going to go first.
Carefully and deeply, there we go, I came alive there, analyzing, the grant may close. And so your natural strength in being able to make sure you stay on mission can be an obstacle if you don't yield at the right time, and all of a sudden the opportunity is gone, and later you go, gosh, that probably would have been a good thing. So you kind of have to balance. That's why it's great to have everybody kind of representing a different corner. You guys had a nice balance in your team and your board of different voices, which allows that kind of good balanced output. When you have a board that's all Ds or all I, then it doesn't, if you're all Ds, it doesn't come down to what the best thing to do is, it comes down to who's gonna win. Who's gonna be the loudest voice in the room that's gonna persuade the other. If you're an I just wanna persuade everybody to my point of view, if I'm not careful about it. Any other examples from staff or board members?
I'll jump in. But I'm going to use a non-work example that just happened Saturday. So I'm a D, and so I was returning some sofas, and my father-in-law, he's more an S person, just based on this. Okay. Well, I'm going to be kind. And I am so strong-willed and results-oriented that I have a plan, and I say, you know, at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna have the truck that I go to rent. By 8:40, it's loaded. I gotta be at Costco by 9 o'clock. I mean, I'm gonna do everything to stay on track, get everything, I mean, and so my father-in-law has some great ideas. He's very calm, very agreeable, supportive, but some of the ideas just are not gonna work. And I'm just kind of just agreeing with him, and I didn't adapt. We're going to do it my way in the story. I did not adapt in that situation. And yeah, I had everything done. I was back at home, I think by 9:40 or so. I mean, and just very directive and just Yeah, I got the results, and it happened, and I felt bad for him, but we got mission accomplished, and that's all I cared about at the time. And as I look at the times here when I've had to adapt my style outside, because I have a cabinet that I think is well balanced here, and it's pretty much every Tuesday cabinet meetings, and they can agree or disagree today. Think have gotten better to not just to be more meet the needs of the cabinet, the Is and CNSs, and I think a lot of that is I'll give you an example with position control, and we're definitely results oriented, but I would say that I try to just really understand and each one of the needs, and especially try to be agreeable and supportive for different programs. I might be thinking and making a decision, let's make a decision now. So yeah, so I've been able to adapt to some degree on that and position control, so we develop a process. 100%.
Maybe 80%, Dr. Moran.
No, yeah, maybe less than that, but.
Well, a D is a good. Lounge singer when I carry this, but I will yield to this. Testing one, okay. Is it going to echo against this? Okay. How you doing, sir? Okay. Welcome. Good to see you again. So imagine them in those 4 quadrants, which is probably pretty representative of most groups, and think about what they need to hear about your great idea or your initiative or your convocation, welcoming them back, or your staff meeting with principals. They all come with different needs. Some of them just want the big ideas and they want to be inspired. Some of them want those details and a well thought out strategic plan, and incorporate a little bit of each of those. And then you use those qualities and the qualities of your team to build stronger teams. Learn who to rely on. I think I shared, Greg, you know Jim Novak. He is as C as they get, and I'm as I as they get. And most meetings were an adversarial debate between my CBO and me, a friendly, healthy, fun adversarial debate. It was intentional. And I know it was intentional because the minute I would change my mind and agree with them, he would switch to my point of view and start arguing from the other side. It was just by the time we finished chewing on every possible thing, we learned to use that skill and that attribute in a way that would make sure there were no surprises when we move forward. And he's still kind of that guy. We're both retired. When there's a bond issue in the community, he'll call me to debate one side or the other. We still do that. So now let's take that and put our needs for how we need to approach the world and how we view the world.
Let's look at your governance agreements. And you guys are so familiar with this governance handbook by now. You've been through it many times, and I'm hoping to bring you through some fresh angles on it today. So we're not just being about compliance, it's about alignment. The compliance is the easy part, but is our behavior aligned and operating in fidelity with those agreements? Your handbook represents your aspiration. You never really achieve it. You're always aspiring to it. And the most important thing you could do is when you get away from your agreements or you run into a problem, you go back to them and say, what could we have done differently here? Did we not operate in fidelity with our agreements? Why did our board feel dysfunctional in this conversation? What is it we need to know and learn to do better? So how closely your behavior is matching your aspiration as a person, as an individual, and then how is your board doing is kind of the activities we're going to do today. And with each of those, we'll stop and say, is there anything we need to change in this section as we kind of walk through your handbook? So why does it matter? What does effective governance make possible that otherwise wouldn't happen? And the answer is right in your handbook. Your handbook says that it's all about improving student learning and achievement. Your bottom line, superordinate unity of purpose comes around student outcomes. That sounds so simple and easy, and boards operate so separate from that most times. And I'll give you an example of a search I'm just had done a proposal on that we didn't get that I won't name the district. We went in to do a proposal for their superintendent search and kind of a beauty contest. They bring in 4 different search firms and we answer the same questions and, you know, everything but a talent competition. And they had 10 questions for us. And at the end when we left, I said to my partner, what did you notice about those questions? She said, I don't know, they were hard. I said, yeah, but what else? Not one of them had anything to do with students or kids or learning. All adult issues. How do you find us a superintendent who will communicate the fiscal situation fairly to the community? That's a good question, because they're going, like every district, they're going through delivering some hard news to their community around money. But the next question was, how do you have the teachers understand and be more supportive and work with us? All about every angle that an adult interaction came in, 10 questions totally focused on adults. I said, and I bet that's not their mission statement. I bet their mission statement is, and every adult in the community will love its board and support board action. That is what I would infer their mission was from that interview. And I thought, what a lost opportunity. We did not get the search. Wasn't too disappointed. Because I could tell they needed some work around getting back to their core mission and looking for somebody that will actually advance the lives of kids, which I think is clearly what yours states, but does your behavior align with that? And when those tough decisions come up, can you cycle back and say, what's our superordinate goal here, and will that help us break through this challenge we're facing? That's from your handbook, page 3. I'll let you take a minute and read that. And without effective governance and effective agreements, that won't happen. So this is a chance for us to start putting some of this into action, a little bit of independent work, a little bit of group work. If you're a board member, I'd like you, actually this one's an observation opportunity for staff. If you're a board member, look at pages 3 and 4, your trustee standards. Superintendent, there's superintendent standards on page 4. And I'm going to ask you to kind of go through and make some side notes in your handbook. Which standards have especially been tested this year? So go through and read those aspirational standards that control your life, that would define your performance either as a superintendent or a board member. Is there something there that's especially been tested? And as you're looking forward to the challenges you see on the horizon, are there some standards that you think if you were going to really focus on 1 or 2 to strengthen your service and to align it with the challenges ahead, which one would those be? And I'll give you like 5 minutes to take a look at those individually. Any questions about that? Okay. in a minute or two, I'll ask again for a brave soul to share out. Okay, I'll start with trustees this time, since I start with Dr. Miranda. Actually, Dan started, but do you have a standard, as you look over those aspirational standards for a trustee, and again, what those are, and these are right from CSBA, you guys adopt, is individual trustees bring unique skills, values, and beliefs to the board. In order to govern effectively, individual trustees must work with each other and the superintendent to ensure that a high-quality education is provided to each student. And then it lists bullets, kind of the I wills or the aspirational promises. Which one or more of these did you feel was especially tested this year? You were raising your hand, sort of. No? You're fixing your hair. Close enough.
I think this year and previous years, I think the first one, keep learning and achievement for all students as a primary focus, because we're pulled in so many different directions. So it's up to us to keep going back and prioritizing student achievement for all students. I was very pleased this past week where we had our African American, what is it called? Amoja? Amoja. And we had a packed house. And to me, that was a huge success, because I had never seen that before in our district. And thanks to the staff under Dr. Peterson, that to me, it's a huge accomplishment, and it's something that we need to do more of and continue doing.
You know, those are the things that come about when you really have your eyes on students. You know, there are things that feel farther away from the students, but even in those things, if you stop and say, okay, how does this facility issue, you know, if resources are going to go here, where won't they go? Are those resources restricted resources? If we're making a decision, does it impact adults? Are we making more comfortable space for adults, or are we improving learning environments for kids? So keeping your eye on that shared goal you all have can be a breakthrough in tough conversations. Anybody else have one that they thought was especially tested this year? Anybody struggle with confidentiality, like forgetting what's confidential, what isn't? I can remember boards, my own boards. Occasionally, by total accident, I'll hear them talking about something and they're forgetting that's a closed session issue, right? It's not intentional, they're not meaning to violate anything, but being able to be mindful, especially when situations are, lawsuits are being settled and things are happening and the media has questioning minds, just that notion of keeping first and foremost in your mind, what is confidential and what can I violate and what can I share? Sir.
I think that over the last few years, primarily the last few years, we as a board have been overly frustrated with a lot of the legal issues that we've had to deal with. It's taken a lot of our time, our effort, our staff's effort to address these issues. And you know, because we have to, because we're required to do that, it always appears to most of us, if not all of us, that it takes away from our focus of student learning and concentrating on the reason why most of us were actually elected for these positions, to overlook that. And I think that, and I hear it from board members when we have to make these difficult decisions, that, it's, it's a shame that we spend so much time having to deal with these. And for the most part, it's individuals who do the things they shouldn't be doing that create the most problems. And we're addressing the one rather than addressing the whole, which is all our students, and providing them the education and discussing that as a primary issue. And, it's been like that for the last couple, 2-3 years. And, but what helps is like what Bertha said and what we've been doing with every other aspect of the departments in our district. Everything we do is to improve educational environment. We're looking to improve academic achievement. We're looking to improve all the different areas and trying to provide, the right people as hirees for the right positions. So it's a challenge, and it's something that we deal with, regularly.
It's a great example. When you mantra even during that. Yeah, this is a difficult conversation, but this is a part of what we do to make sure that our environment is safe for students. We need to be fiscally responsible with the budget. And so we need to understand what we're settling and if it's fair and appropriate, because those resources are coming from someplace, and we need to make sure it all works in our system. So I think that you can tie back and rely on those values when it seems far away. In fact, it's the only way I know to get through them, because otherwise it does seem like you're in the world of adults and not kids so much sometimes. Yes, Martha. Please do.
Okay, the second bullet, the value, support, and advocate for public education. I think a lot of times, we know what we have in our district. We know that we have excellent programs. We know that we have lots and lots of things that we can brag about. I think we need to brag more. I need to show off more. An example is community cabinet, where we invite the community to come and see what we're doing, what our kids are doing, what they're accomplishing. And it's never failed in these community cabinets. People, community members walk out in awe of what we're doing. And can't think of a better way to show off what public education is all about. And I think it's our job to continue doing that.
Couldn't agree more. It also gets people. You're celebrating, look what our students are accomplishing. Look what's happening in these kids' lives that our work is influencing, and how do we do more of that and get more kids in this room? Communities, I think, leave with a different impression of a school board. They think you're just some bureaucracy meeting on things like budget and not always getting right into the lives of kids. So great example. Do you see? Yeah, Dan.
Absolutely. I would agree with Bertha. Definitely, what's interesting, I found, they promoted the success of all students. However, I'll say this, that as I reflect upon the year, to simplify that and to keep everybody focused, when you ask around 10, 10, 95, 95, everybody kind of understands that. And that's been our simple approach. But certainly has been tested because if I do the math, 85% of my time is focusing on the HR, finance issues, which are very, very, very important, as you mentioned, and I think it should be flipped, and we're getting there, and I've put a lot of because they can handle it on the cabinet, a lot of pressure to focus on those do all the other those things more, and so I can focus on sewage treatment. The other one that is tested is, I mean, Dan's point about the perspective and differences, and absolutely is tested across the board, and there's so many differences and styles, and not just among board and staff, but the students and parents, the vast range of views. It's quite a bit out there to navigate through that, and so I would say it's tested weekly, maybe even daily at times, and so that, and I think Frank said this very well too, and then you spend 80% on maybe one or two people, take a lot of your time, versus perhaps the silent majority at times, and yeah, we do listen. We're tested, like I'll spend as much time, if 2 hours with individuals that perhaps are that totally diverse views. Recently I had several meetings with those individuals, and I sit there and listen, and because I want to hear them out, and we will disagree. So, but we are, I think the board has directed staff to sit there and listen and to meet, and we do that, and I think the board knows that, whether it's my assistant soups or even myself. We meet with them, and I think it's good for us. And I will say this, that sometimes it is tested, distinction between, I just put test number 2 was the board and staff roles. I think that it says the respect of the role of the board as the representative of the community. Either way, I tell and my cabinet does a good job. The board of trustees, they live within the community, and we don't really understand how they're tested on the community, out at Stater Brothers, at a gas station, or at Woody's, or whatever. At the same time, our board, we get tested at times on them understanding our roles with what we have to deal with, and because it's quite a bit too there. But I do think that that's just what the system is set up that way, and we're here to serve. The board is here to serve the community. So all we're trying to do is support each other. I say that tell our captain, stay in your lanes, and that's kind of the way I look at it. So yeah, so those are 2 tested so far, I think.
I'll tell you something, an observation I think you guys do better than most, or than many, and that's the bullet that says, recognize that the board and superintendent governance relationship is supported by the management team within the district. as evidenced by this room right now. Very often when I do a governance team workshop, cabinet doesn't attend. And I always think it's a lost opportunity because hearing and listening to what your values, priorities, hopes, dreams, and fears are really can inform their work. Just as importantly, if they hear you say something that's not correct, it gives them a chance to say, oh, I need to do a better job communicating to the board because they were just talking about this, but they got it wrong. And so you don't stop right there in the meeting, or at least I hope you don't. Well, you don't because you're sitting here still, so that tells me you learned that rule. But that's something in cabinet to say, gosh, I couldn't help but notice. You know, Dan was well intended, but what he said is inaccurate. So how do we get some correct information and get the board? Maybe I'll do a board report next time. So the fact you guys are here really speaks to the expanded governance team being shared. I didn't just do that. Did you do that back there? Somebody rushing me along here? Pushing my slides forward. So I commend you guys for being here today. I think it's really important. I think you'll learn a lot by the end of the day. And with that, I will move on. That's a bright slide. Governing with integrity. So in this one, I want you to take a look at pages 11, which are your adopted standards of conduct, which are really unique to you guys. This is not a CSBA template that I recognize. I think this is work you've done. What are your standards of conduct? And then I want you to do two things as you read through them. Think about, well, actually three things. Where are we the strongest? And you can think about yourself first. Where am I the strongest? Where is, as a board, are we the strongest corporately? Are there any of these standards that you're drifting on? Because you want to catch those first. If you catch those where you're just starting to drift, you can recalibrate and get back on track and say, you know, we're spending a little too much time on this or not enough on that. And then is there inconsistent, this is where the hard conversation is because it means calling out sometimes. Saying, is there inconsistency among the board? Do you have an agreement? I'll make this one up. The board president is the spokesperson for the district. And do you have board members that are speaking on behalf of the district outside of that? This is the room and the place to talk about that and to recalibrate and say, do we need to change our agreement? Or do we need to pull into compliance on it? So I'll give you some time again to take a look at pages 11 and 12 of your standards of conduct. Look in the mirror first. Is there any one of these that I think I need to work on a little bit better? And then second, as a board, are there any things we need to pay attention to here? let's start with the strongest. Is there one of these values that, or attributes that you feel your board pretty much can be counted on 100% to honor as a group? Yes, Frank. Please.
Now, as I take a look at "we will" section and read through all of them, I think it's really highly representative of many of the actions that the majority of the board does take throughout the given school year. We have some that are more active than others for a variety of different reasons, which is understandable. But I think that our ability to work together as a team has been very strong. Our understanding that each one of us has individual expertise in different areas has benefited this board in discussions that we've had in a variety of different issues that have come up. And I truly believe that everyone here is a responsible person and strong person with integrity. And we all do conduct ourselves in the best interest of Cone Joint Unified School District, its students, its staff, and its community. So I would say the first one for sure, no problem at all.
Ask you a question on that.
Yes.
before you share any other thing. Does working together in a spirit of harmony, respect, cooperation always mean a 7-0 vote?
Not always, but we learn to respect the decisions that we all make, and that we also learn to move on from that decision. And I think that's a very important thing to have as a board. I have never seen any hard feelings. I've seen maybe some discussion of, and so forth, but it doesn't go any further than that. Not with this board, because I've been, fortunate enough to have sit in maybe 5 other boards besides this board. So, but with this board, like I said, I feel really strong. When I do serve as president, I pretty much know who to look for answers in certain situations, because I know each other's, and I've always done this for all these years, who had the expertise in certain areas. And sometimes I will even call their name before they even say anything, because I know that they have something to say, and so forth. So that's, we're not, let's put it this way, we're not close in the fact that we're going to go and have dinner together and meet with families and do those things. But we have the same goals, and it has to be with the betterment of the education of our district, and we stick to that. And, I'm very proud to be part of this team and part of this district. And I don't hold back from saying that at all. The devoting time, though I would like to devote more time, and when I first started, I was everywhere, and things have, particularly my career and my job has changed over the years that required more of my time away. There's certain individuals here that do devote a lot of time and do represent the district very well. And, and they do speak on behalf of the district when asked to speak. And I don't have a problem with that, because I know that anyone here on the board will say the right things, will mention the right things. So though we do look at the president as, and you had mentioned this, as the lead person, the person that we look toward to be the, the person that will speak on our behalf, if the president is not available, I personally, and I can't speak for everybody else, but I don't mind if Dan get asked to speak, that he speaks on behalf of the board, Israel, or any of the other board members, because I know that they will do a good job in representing the district, the children, and the board as well. So,
You know, Frank, I worked with the board earlier this year, and they had a very popular podcast in the community that was education-based or maybe civic-based. So the mayor might be a guest, a school board member. And they had a very rich discussion with the board on when a school board member goes on a podcast, what they can speak to freely and what they needed to be specific and set apart as, well, now you're not talking to trustee Flores, you're talking to citizen Flores. And my opinion may not be reflected by the board. And to make sure in those situations you were very specific. So if it's, the board has taken an official position on something, you can confidently speak and say the board has taken a position on this bond issue, whatever it is. But if they start getting into things more about your opinion, there's a place in there where you make sure you're distinct. This is not an issue we have discussed as a board, nor have we taken action, so I can't speak on behalf of the board. But here's where I stand on this issue. And to make sure that you're specific about that. That happens a little more. Aren't you guys entering an election season? You have some candidates on the ballot. That'll become more of an issue, right? As time goes, you're going to be in positions where maybe you're speaking from your own position about whatever your hopes, dreams, and desires are. And also, if you're a current trustee, you're speaking from that position as well, and keeping that distinction separate. I think that one might be tested a little in election season. It usually is.
if I could just make a mention to that too, a lot of the public, the general public, sees us as a board, but they also see us as individuals. So they assume that we can make decisions on behalf of the district as individuals. And what I try to do, and I know that other board members do, is we try to remind them that we are a board, and the board only makes decisions when they're together as a whole. And and I've come across this, a lot of individuals don't understand that concept. Oh, I could go to Assembly so-and-so and he could write me a letter, but he's not part of a board. I could go to Mayor so-and-so, yeah, he's the mayor, he could write something, but we're a board. And so the concept of being elected member, well, I voted for you, but the concept of elected member as a board, sometimes it's a hard concept for some people to grasp and understand, and that's where what you just mentioned could come into play. So we have to really, really, remind people at times, when it came down to the letter that I asked, they wanted individual, but no, we're a board, so that's an important factor.
You thought maybe there was some drifting? Like it might be time to recalibrate and make sure we stay on point with one as a board? Or you as an individual, if you feel like there's one that you need to look at more closely? I call the Brown Act 1,000 points of no. Navigating the Brown Act is very tricky for many, many boards because all the well-intentioned conversation in the world, and all of a sudden you look around and think, wait a minute, I'm standing with 3 other board, it's a very simple thing. Or an email communication that we don't, that goes out to everybody and people reply to all instead of going through as a BC. Can be areas that can be very tricky that I don't know about you guys, but I have to have my mind on that even now as a search consultant, making sure that I don't engage the board unintentionally in a conversation around the search and don't put them in harm's way by my behavior and invitation.
I'm not addressing anybody in particular, but providing direction to staff. I think that sometimes individuals may forget that we need consensus to do that. We need to be able to do that at a board meeting, and we need to have agreement of the majority of the board in order to give direction and give extra work to staff. And, that could be an area sometimes I see get drifted from some individuals that I hear what they are doing. And they need to be reminded that, once again, like I mentioned earlier, we do operate as a board. We make decisions as a board. And that's where, that's where what we do, put it that way.
Here to hear you say exactly that, because our challenge and my challenge when I sat in your seat, not that seat, was when a trustee did call me to direct my work or to suggest something of how do I skillfully, number one, the minute you're done, you call your superintendent and say, just heard from Israel and he's interested in this piece. How do you feel about how should we handle this? Sometimes it's very simple. I just want to let you know a tree limb is down. I mean, that's one level of information. Another one is, I'm really seeing that I'm not sure I support this implementation of this program. What other options are out there? Or I'd like you to go take a look at this program that I saw at the CSBA conference. And it's coming from you as an individual directly across the table. There's an opportunity there, that's an easy drift because it's almost always well-intended. It isn't like you're trying to bypass, or maybe you are, for elegance reasons, can we get this done quickly? But to always circle back and hold each other accountable for that procedural thing. Otherwise, you will lose your focus and your momentum because there are 7 of you. Yeah.
There's a procedure that I don't mind following. I can't speak for the rest of the board, but Dr. Miranda made a simple request. He's okay with us talking to any of the other assistant soups, when we might have a question or so forth. But his request was basically, I talk with, say, Brandon, for example, let him know, and just as a courtesy, and I see that as a courtesy and respect, let him know that, hey, I talked to Brandon about this issue, just want to let you know. But Brandon is the person that would give me the information I need, and so forth. But 9 times out of 10, I do go to Frank, and then, I will talk with him, and he'll probably refer me to Brandon, or ask Brandon, or ask Greg, or ask Tina, or ask Dr. Ortiz over here, Anthony, and, and I would get my information. So, but sometimes I'll just run into him, and then I say, hey, you know what, I do have a question, but I want to make, and I'll ask the question, then later on I'll let Dr. Miranda know, hey, I brought this up. Because then he comes back, he says, he could assure follow-up. And this way, the follow-up would, I've talked to 2 people at least. So communication is a big key, when you were working with a board and a district staff. It has to happen.
Reminder that when November comes, as much as I hope everyone's still around this table, we don't ever know for sure what's going to happen in an election. Your adherence to these guidelines then makes it very easy to induct new people because they won't understand that, right? And then there will be some drifting of new people who, by just ignorance of the process, are going to do what they think is the right thing by going directly to a staff member or by directing staff. They heard something at a school that a principal wants, and they call and say, can you make this happen? Greg, can you get a little bit more money over to this school because they've got this thing that needs some more money? And for all the right reasons, maybe. But your adherence and your bringing people in and your induction of new board members really matters. And it's great you guys have all these things codified. Anything else in this section you saw, Bertha? I think, look at
That we're drifting, I think it's a strength, actually. On bullet number 3, where it says devote time and thought and study to our duties and responsibilities. There's, for example, when we're having a board meeting, we receive the agenda a few days before, and a lot of times I think when we're approving the agenda items 1 through 60, it may seem to the public that we're just kind of, okay, yeah, we approve everything, no worries. But that's not the case. Because we get the agenda items before the board meeting, I think a lot of us, and again, we go with our strengths, like if it has something to do with facilities or, or anything like that. I really appreciate the process. I appreciate us being able to look at each item. And if we do have questions, we send them to Joanne. Then Joanne says, we'll look into it, and then sends them to the appropriate Assistant Soup and to Frank. And then before the meeting, we get responses. So, yeah. To all of us. Yeah, we'd go. Mhm. Yeah, and like I said, it could be some that, I might just be glancing over, but then another board member might see something that I don't see. So when Joanne sends it out and said, these are items that were brought up, I think, oh, okay, I'm glad somebody asked that question, And we try, I think all of us, I can speak for all of us, that we try to not do it the day of the board meeting. Sometimes that we, because you're running around getting everything ready. Yeah, we do drift in that area sometimes, but I know staff probably appreciates.
We are all mere mortals, and so when it comes down to it, there'll be weeks that you have every bit of that time you need to look at those 60 items and get your questions answered. And there will be real questions that surface in real time and in a board meeting, and those deserve to be answered too. It's how you ask the question, right? How you frame it. I know, Doctor, you may not have this answer ready for me right now, but I'd like an answer on this budget issue. This is a question that came up, and he may be able to address it immediately, but you don't set him up for that's a bigger question that I'm ready to answer right now. So there's a respectful way to do it that also makes it real. You're real people in a real process, and the community understands that, and you're going to see things. Someone's going to ask a question, as you pointed out, you didn't think about, but it might trigger a question in your mind. So I think there are real opportunities. You want to front load as much as you can, but you also want to think about how you approach it when it does come up, and is it worth bringing up? I have not ever seen you guys operate like this, but I have seen boards that pride themselves on posing a question that might even stump the crowd to show who the smartest person in the room is, right? That's the ugly side of posing a question, is playing gotcha, which is obviously something that you guys aren't drifting that far. But it can happen. It can happen when new trustees come in, especially people sometimes are elected on a platform of things aren't working. And so they're going to come in and challenge the things that maybe you're doing and understanding routinely. And there has to be a process to kind of induct and bring them along too.
And consistency. Out of something that I wanted to bring up is among members, there's a fine line, I guess, of when we can go directly to a staff member, be it a counselor or an assistant principal, but I think it's not very healthy for an organization to have all of us kind of going our every separate ways, because Frank's not going to know what he needs to be, the communication with Frank has to be a priority. And we just need to be careful not to drift away and start getting information from staff, be it a custodian or, we talk to him, we enjoy talking to him, but I think there's a fine line there where,
Easy one to cross. And you live in the communities, and that person may live right next door to you. And so there's that. People who have access can, just out of convenience, they're not going to come board meeting, but they don't mind walking across your yard and catching you in the front yard and posing their question. How do you handle it? One way is, is a board member reaching out to get information from people intentionally? The other would be, are they allowing people to approach them? Sometimes that falls in the area, like in negotiations and employee associations. Who on the board might be more receptive to what I have to say, and as opposed to coming to the board and addressing the entire board. When you see that happening, if you should see it happening, what would you do as a board? What are your agreements on that, and how would you address if it came back to you, or Frank was aware that a board member was going directly to staff for information? How would you handle that?
First of all, I think that's something that a board member should never do, personally. Yeah, we're not in the position to do any kind of investigation. That's district staff if it's needed. And we shouldn't be going out and looking. Now, we do go out, and you're right, we could be on campus, we could be at church, we could be Stater Brothers, we could get approached. That's part of what we do. I feel that it never hurts to listen. And I listen, and all I do is I let them know I will take your issues in consideration, or I will talk with the appropriate person. One of the things that I'd like to always ask them is, who have you spoken to? Have you spoken to your supervisor? Have you spoken to your principal? Have you spoken to your union representative? If they haven't done any of that, and it warrants that, I refer them back to them. But if they said they've spoken to all these individuals, my next move is to talk to our superintendent and just let him know, this is what occurred, this is who talked to me, this was their issue, and, you know, and then he would take care of it. At that point, he would assign the proper person to address that issue or to talk to that person, depending on what the issue was. But I don't think any board member should be out there mingling, talking, making decisions with staff members, making promises to staff members. We don't make promises because there's no, we can't keep those promises. There's no guarantee that things are gonna work the way they want, so we have to really be smart in not doing that. And I say the majority of us understand that.
So when it does happen, a typical protocol, and I think I saw it addressed, I was trying to flip through the pages to find it, would be that you would address that person individually and say, you know what, Dan, gosh, I heard you when you were visiting the school, the counselor took you aside and I noticed you brought that issue up at the board meeting. Seems like was inappropriate. Let's talk about that. You know, we have this agreement. And then see how that goes, and if he says, yeah, you know, you're right, that absolutely happened, sorry, I'll keep an eye on that. The next level would be to let your superintendent know if it continued, or you were concerned it was continuing. And it has gone all the way as high as censure from a board. Very unusual. Most often people will conform. But know that there is a process for that if you're violating an agreement. I looked in your protocols. On page 18, you have a whole section that addresses handling concerns from the public and staff. And Frank, it almost verbatim outlines what you're talking about in terms of the appropriate role, that you should listen well, clarify, and direct them. Not try to resolve, not carry the message for them, but direct them to the right person. Otherwise, you become the clearinghouse sometimes for constituent groups to say, we don't have to address Frank, or we'll just go through. We'll go through, you know, one of you to get our issues to come forward. And so you've addressed it very nicely in your protocols, and that will be a place to look back at. Other thoughts before we move on this slide?
I was just going to add, you know, the fun one is when they approach our spouses, because they didn't sign up for this, and it happens as well, innocently or not. There's been times where my wife is, they've approached her because she's on campus for a number of reasons. We have kids obviously in the school, so you know, she didn't sign up for this, but we have to have that conversation about making sure that, you know, can't promise anything. Happy to direct them, you know, I'll take care of it, but it is something that does happen, particularly when we have family, not just our spouse, in the community. So, yeah.
They need the orientation as well. You might need to have a spouse handbook as your next. Give them a little 3x5 card they read from when that happens, because absolutely it will. When I was superintendent in Huntington Beach, I lived there, and I was on a cul-de-sac, and my neighbor across the street taught in Long Beach and thought they had the best curriculum in every area, and ours wasn't. And I literally would have to look out my window, run to get the newspaper back in the day, when the newspaper was in your driveway, look around and then run back into my house and make sure, because she would stop me about their spelling program in Long Beach, which apparently would have solved everything. So I do remember what that's like a bit. You guys get that every day. Okay, values into action. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road. So if you go to page 3 and 4. Oh, Frank, sure.
Just, I'll be really quick because I don't want to prolong, but, you know, you had the word integrity, and I have to say that with true earnest that, you know, because integrity for some people means a lot. The loyalty of our school board to the district and to the community is, my experience, this board is it's unbelievable true. And you don't see that everywhere. I talk to my colleagues, so I say that I commend this board for that, you know, I think that's something that is extremely strong. And it's not explicit there, but it's within there if you read through it.
That situation in Vaughn's, if your mental model is, I'm an ambassador for the board, I'm an ambassador for the district, you'll handle that question better than if you're there as an ambassador for yourself, right? If you're thinking, okay, if I answer this question, I will rise in this person's eyes. If I am responsive and help them, you're probably on the wrong track. But thank you for that clarification. That issue should go before the board. Have you thought about writing an email, calling Ed Services, you know, whatever their idea falls into? Because that's very interesting, and I know our superintendent would want to get back to you. You're an ambassador for the board, which, by the way, lifts you up, too. You look better as an individual because the truth is you're probably making a promise you can't deliver in bonds if you're not careful, and that's not going to advance you at all. So if you look at page 3 and 4, I just have 4 of these that I called out. The first one's on role clarity tension, and we've kind of talked about that a little bit. Where do we sometimes drift into operations instead of governance? So if you look at page 3 and 4, read that section and maybe think of situations where it's easy to drift, even unintentionally, in the area of role tension. Now I'm trying to find where it says role tension. Must be on page 4. Look at the very bottom. Understand the distinctions between board and staff roles and refrain from performing management functions that are the responsibility of superintendent and staff. So in that area, where is it that a trustee could create some tension around that, even if it's unintended? And Israel's laughing over there, so I'm thinking he's got an example in his mind. You know what? That's a veteran trustee talking, because the young ones come in and try to fix it and realize, okay, that didn't go so well. I don't think I want to do that.
I'll add that, and it touches a little bit on what we were just talking about. You know, the way in which we communicate questions or concerns, because there's no doubt that at times we'll see things that will be quote unquote operational, right? We go into a classroom and it's clearly there's damage, it's a leaky ceiling. Those things aren't necessarily our role to fix, but certainly we'll want to know, hey, does facilities know but how we convey those questions is really important. And this is my personal belief, and board members may disagree with me, I don't find board meetings an effective way to convey those specific concerns for multiple reasons. Number one, we only have 2 meetings a month, so if you're holding on to that concern, that leaky roof or that broken door lock, for a week or 2 for the board meeting, we've lost time to get things fixed. But secondly, no matter how we phrase it, no matter how much we try to soften it, having been a staff person at one point in my career, being on the other side of that, you almost never receive that other than a board member trying to play gotcha or trying to embarrass somebody or say, hey, somebody's not doing their job. That may not be the intent, but I can tell you that's what's going to be heard. And so I send plenty of emails when I see something or have a question or a concern. A phone call is fine, an email's fine. I think that's better handled behind the scenes than waiting to a board meeting and giving the laundry list of, hey, these are all the things that I saw today that I didn't like. Not the best venue, it just really isn't.
Panicked and said, trustee so-and-so just visited my classroom. And every classroom she walked into, she went up and said hello to the teacher, as one does, and greeted her, and then said, is there anything you need? Is there anything at all you need? And of course, which teacher wouldn't have something he or she needed? That's pretty much a given. And by the way, she didn't write it down or anything. And so it was kind of, she was a brand new trustee. I think she thought maybe that was her role. I think her best intention was to show we care. But as she left, that teacher was kind of waiting at the mailbox for that whatever to arrive. And so the principal called me panicked and said, you might want to talk to trustee so-and-so. And I said, I will definitely have that conversation for her sake, to help her out. So well-intended, but you're absolutely right. So you have to kind of be careful because teachers will say, have you seen, this plug hasn't worked for a year and a half, you know, and well, if you put in a work order, am I the first person you're telling about? You know, how do we get that solved?
Gary, just a comment. I think you also, the relationship and the superintendent, especially with the board, you have to know their strengths. And each one of them brings an expertise, something that, as superintendent, I've learned over the years, that you do ask, you know, operational questions because they've done it, been there, done it. And I won't call anybody because all of you bring something that it helps me when I go back to the operations, or I would say, oh, or you share some of your ways not to do it, or it's worked out, and I say, oh, perfect. And, you know, I'll give an example, like everybody knows Mr. Ibarra. I mean, besides special ed, he understands adult school like nobody's business. So of course I'm gonna talk to Frank and about adult school and how, because he's seen it all. Besides that, you know, Bertha is former principal, just like Jonathan Ojeda, and so of course I'm going to sit there and say, you know, what do you think about this or those kinds of things. And every one of, you know, Dan, he worked for the counties and he's a CEO. I mean, so he understands things that I don't understand, and so. I think that's okay, absolutely. So that, I just wanted to put some context on it because you know, they know that I'm constantly asking them for, in our conversations, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You know, and so I just, it's a good, I would say, synergy, or it has to be, and even Berenice Sandoval, who's is a parent in our district who, you know, I mean, with Dan too, but I'll talk to each one about what a certain area, you know,
So in
specifically.
addition to the expertise each of you bring, that you as a superintendent, you want to know who rides what hobby horse so you can take advantage of that. You also represent trustee areas that may have particular needs that may be different from others. And you do have an obligation to not to advocate, but to make sure those needs are known and to be a spokesperson for your trustee area as well. So if we look at page 14, meeting effectiveness, and I'll just take the meeting norms. Which meeting norms are consistently honored and which ones can break down under pressure? And that's those, looks like maybe 10 bullets under number 5 on page 14. Let's start with, what do you think of, which one of these would you point out as a hallmark that is consistently followed?
everyone participates is one that we do. Even the one that doesn't speak much still participates in some way.
Is that right, Joanne? Do we hear from you?
We always have something to say about whatever topic we're speaking about. If we're in accordance with it, or if we're not in accordance with it, or if we have questions, we don't understand what the, something about that topic, we always ask the questions. So I think everyone participates in that way, just to make sure that we're clear on whatever the topic is.
Active listening is also participation.
Yes.
Because the biggest mouth in the room isn't always the best participant or participating, right? Very often in a group. I'll tell you the one I struggle with: seeking first to understand, then be understood. If you're an I, you're persuasive. And while you're talking, I'm listening and deciding how I'm going to persuade you to my point of view, and I stop listening to you. So sometimes you have to make I have to make a deliberate effort to count and to listen and to hold my thought. And every once in a while, I realize I was wrong when I listen, and I don't have the need to persuade anymore.
Agree.
Does that sound familiar? Okay, brother. Brother eyes there.
I think the last one too, where we protect confidentiality. I think it's very, very much, we do that as a board, keep it to ourselves, keep it behind the doors, and it stays there. I think we all do that.
Once you've reached that, it's very hard to trust in an organization. It really is. So credit to you guys. Unity versus individual voice. If you look on page 8, and it's the very last paragraph. We speak with one voice once decisions are made, we collectively support them, and we move to implementation. When we are unified, we are not a distraction to the work of the district or community, but a catalyst for the focused effort of employees. So when you do speak with one voice, what does that look like?
I think it's based on each and every one of us being well informed on the topic and the issue. Everyone asked really pertinent questions before or during the meeting, because superintendent does make himself available before the meeting and does share any information that he feels is important for us to know before the meeting takes place. So it gives us opportunities to speak to him and talk to him and get that information. But I think that when we all speak as one, you could almost say it's impressive, because I think that the district, what I mean by that is the staff, the residents, the community who are there, and those who are listening to us feel that, we are working together for the same common good for everyone. And it comes across like that. It doesn't sound divisive. It doesn't sound like, yeah, maybe only 3 of us feel this way and 4 don't, or vice versa. And typically, we do all tend to agree on most cases. And like I mentioned earlier, even though someone may not agree on something and vote the opposite, we accept it and we move on.
Those are the magic words. So even if you're on the minority end of a decision, you voted no to the yes, and it's moving forward, your authority and power is in that group action, whether or not you supported it. And so you go out and you actively support the implementation. You let go of the fact that you just make sure it's done right, that whatever is decision going forward is done right. You can certainly keep your concerns going forward, but you support the board action and decision. Because it's absolutely true that you become a distraction otherwise to the work. So sometimes that means being silent. If it's like an ethical issue for you that they really went in a direction you can't support, then you're silent on it. Thinking of a situation where I had a trustee who was just an anti-tax person in general. That was his value. So something like a bond was not something he could support. It violated, and we tried every angle in and information. At the end of the day, he was a no, but he didn't join the opposition forces. He wasn't a voice at the lectern against it. He was quiet and didn't actively support it, but he didn't actively undermine it. And the board appreciated and understood that was a position of integrity. And he was not a distraction on the board. So there are times that's going to happen. We make some very tough decisions right now, and our world and community can be very ideologically divided on what's best for students and what standards and protocols for staff. That at the end of the day, we need to have that unified voice, or we're going to be part of the problem in the community. And then the last one, communication and trust. Page 13, and it's actually in a couple places, but let's look at page 13. Help me find it. The no surprises. I think it's at the very bottom. No, it does not come at the very bottom. Faster readers than me find it. No, it's a one where maybe let's see if maybe it calls it out better in page 20. Where's my speed readers? Well, even if we don't find the exact language, I bet you're right. You strike me as my speed reader. She's saying page 12, number 1. There it is. When do we fall short of no surprises in a unified? Read it. Do you mind reading out loud this section you found? Thank you. It was right there all the time, but it wasn't on the page. I said, oh, there it is. So, when do we fall short? Do we fall short on that no surprises? You guys are pretty consistent about pulling an item? What if it came up to you in real time? We talked about that a minute ago. You see something you didn't see before, something hits you in the board meeting. You have an option. You can say, I'm going to trust my colleagues on this one and let it go because I didn't get out early, if it's not a high stakes area. But if it's high stakes, and maybe you have information the board needs to make an informed decision. Dan?
I have to plead guilty of that, because there have been a few times I think I've called you day of, Frank, right, and say, this item, I just reread it, and I've read the contract, and I've got a concern about the language, or I've got a concern about, but I also know I don't want to put you in a situation or staff where things are moving. I already have had these discussions. We're getting geared up for it. What we've discussed through that is, I'll ask the question, does this need to be decided today? Or could it be tabled, and I want to be, these are the questions, we can share it with the full board. And I do appreciate that, and I think sometimes that's the case. If ultimately it has to move forward, I think we have the understanding, just as we've shared, I may be a no vote on this, but I'm not going to go and die on that hill and hit everybody over the head with it. I understand it needs to move forward. I'm going to voice, my opinion, vote no, and we'll move on, and it's okay. But I've done that a few times, Frank, I think. Apologize.
Good boardsmanship that actually improves the look of the board, because it's showing you're not a rubber stamp. We all came to agreement somehow secretly and violated the Brown Act ahead of time. No, we're deliberating. We're real people thinking about these things in real time. And from my value system, this is one I can't support because this question isn't answered. I also love, even the last minute call, Frank looks at it and says, you know what, you make a really good point. You don't have to do anything, Dan. I'm going to pull this on an item tonight. I'm going to suggest to the board president we pull item 12.8 for future or additional consideration, which is a good look and just puts the board in better position to make an informed decision. So,
Gary, it goes two ways too, from staff for the board to saying no surprises for them either. And as much time as we spend on looking at the agenda items, and which is quite a bit, we start the process like tomorrow for the next board meeting, and we pretty much look at every single day, and we still because there's quite a bit, we might miss some things. So when we do get an item brought up to us, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, what did we miss here? And so, so it's a two-way street.
I know we all know the answer to this question, but for the public, I'm going to ask this question, Superintendent, so that they know we're asking the right question. And then staff will answer it, and of course, they're prepped and they sound incredibly with it. And everybody looks good. It's a win-win-win. Community has more confidence. Board member shows they're doing their due diligence. Staff shows they're prepared. And is it a bit of theatrics or performing? Yeah. But it goes to an end to support your bigger goal, and that is to do the right thing for kids and to show the community they can have confidence that you're asking the deep questions.
Absolutely, and I'll even call each one of my assistant soups and say, and they know, hey, just get ready for this, or this is coming, or something like that. And so so.
You have to act like it's a unique question. You have to go, well, that's an excellent question. I hadn't thought about that, but now that I do, let me. Yeah. So let's look ahead a little bit. Oops, back there. So you guys have a number of critical, risky issues on your plates going forward. Every district does. So what are you looking at right now that's coming towards your way, and what governance agreement are going to help you navigate those treacherous waters? We can actually use one as an example, or this can just be a reflection piece, but you guys have assembled a toolkit in this handbook that if applied, or I should say when applied, and the fact that you guys revisit it every year will position you for that surprise around the corner in what's coming. And I earlier gave the examples of elections are coming up. There may be some candidates that come up, and the candidates may come in with highly critical views. A way to get elected is to say something's broken and needs to be fixed, and they're the person that can fix whatever it is. And that can make for some challenging times for a board. And so your agreements, there are agreements you have around how do we deal with inducting new members? How do we deal with fidelity to our agreements around our behavior and norms, even with dealing with someone who's got under our skin or who's making a personal attack? I hope you guys don't confront that, but it happens. People do step up. Who's on the ballot this coming November? Yeah. 4 of you are? Joanne, are you? No, are you on this one? On the ballot? Yeah. Oh, okay, that's okay. I was just trying to figure out I was saying, because this is a time your norms and agreement around decorum and behavior have to be, you might want to take the handbook and read it at night and remind yourself of how to present yourself and represent your board. I know you have a highly publicized settlement of a very ugly long-term problem that happened years ago, but is raising its head now. Media will roll those things out as though it's current, and how you remember your protocols, spokesperson, talking points become essential in that kind of an environment to build community. Voicing the importance of safety and your commitments to student safety and to student overall well-being becomes critical as you get in the weeds. I know Frank had shared with me you're dealing with some asset management issues around a school that was a deal that kind of is not going forward as it looked like it might go forward, but is presenting itself in new ways for consideration. Those can become issues where your adherence to your governance standards will help you navigate those waters. Other issues you're facing that are especially high in your mind right now?
Yeah, we're facing the issue that probably every district in California is facing, and that's declining enrollment. That's a reality. And I let folks know this is not a Colton Joint Unified School District problem. It's not a San Bernardino County problem. This is across the state and really across the country as you see declining birth rates and fertility rates. And we were just thinking the other day when I started, this is my 14th year, but when I started, our most impacted elementary school, Sycamore Hills, had over 1,000 students, 1,100 kids. It was the size of a middle school. Today, we're at 500. So it's half the size in about, in about a
There were
decade.
no reboundary done. That's just the natural, wow.
And we're seeing that across the district, of course, as everybody is. And I think we're in a good position to make some decisions that will be net positives for everyone. But the most dangerous thing is to do nothing. And that's where districts really get into trouble. And we're seeing that, where they're having to make difficult decisions because they just either waited too long or just hesitated to make decisions. So, but that's something that we will address as a board proactively.
Closing or consolidating schools is a very risky process, but very necessary. You can only kick that can down the road so long. And you'll know when the right time is, but building the political will, having the right communications, even then, it's really hard. We create schools that families love. So why would they be happy if their school's going to be closed or consolidated? It's a threat. It doesn't feel like an opportunity. It feels like a threat. So your empathy, remembering that and not getting so into the numbers that you forget the impact on a family. The great news is, having had to close some schools in my career, about a week into the new school, if you tried to tell them they needed to go back to the old school, nobody would go. We do a good job of supporting that transition, and they fall in love with their new school, and they find out it's great. But boy, those are some challenging processes for sure. Bertha?
Staying ahead, not just the next month or even the next year, just looking, just as a board and as, as the superintendent, looking ahead, it's like look at projections, look at different options of what we can do so that we're not faced with a decision made just, without much thought or much time to, just, I think planning ahead is very important.
So important, and communicating that planning ahead, because you may take all that incremental time, but if you haven't brought your community along, it feels jarring to them, and you'll say, well, we've been talking about this for 3 years. Well, they don't know that. They hear it when the newspaper article comes out. So how do you proactively start preparing a community for something as significant as that? It's a big deal. Well, I have to tell you guys, it's always a pleasure to work with this board. I want to give Frank a chance to kind of close things out today, but before I hand it over to him, one of the things you've done really well is kept a superintendent. I'm a guy, by the way, if you decide to get rid of him, I know somebody who does searches.
I did not.
Can I give you my cards here? No, in all seriousness, ton of literature out there that talks about longevity of the superintendent and cabinet and success of the district, and that goes all the way into student achievement. And the fact that you guys continue to do this kind of work, you continue to recalibrate, you confront when you drift, it speaks very well to your health as a district. I hope and pray that that you guys are all back here after the elections, but if you're not, I hope and pray there's somebody as good as you or better that comes on the board that can keep this momentum going for this community. But it's always a pleasure to work with you guys, and with that, Frank.
Thank you, Gary. And I did want to raise one more issue, just only because I think districts are it's everywhere. It's artificial intelligence. Yeah. So and that's a big one, and it's a critical issue today, and it touches everything in education everywhere, and teachers and staff, and so we're really focused on that, and we just want to say that we are working towards ensuring that we communicate that out and address a lot of the issues that we don't even know about. So I really do truly believe that the handbook in our protocols in here are going to help us navigate through that. So that was another one I just threw out. Okay. Do you want to?
I can share something I heard in an interview, a candidate interview recently. I wished I had the presence of mind to apply this when I was you guys. So let me share it with you. They asked a question around morale. Like, what do you do as a superintendent? How do you help build morale, keep spirits up? This was in Manhattan Beach where they're going through layoffs, and a community not used to that or employees not used to that are struggling. And she said, well, it's question number 2. And I said, what's question number 2? And so I will demonstrate for you. It's so simple. How are you doing, Joanne? I haven't seen you in a while. How are things? Didn't your daughter just finish up a degree? That's question number 2. So question number 1 is just acknowledgement, how you doing? I remember you. Question number 2 is something you've learned or you know. And so literally when I wish when I visited classrooms, I had jotted down something I learned so the next time I went, even if it was a year later, I'd have this note and I'd say, you know, last time I saw you, you were just moving into a new house. How'd that go? You liking that house? People feel so seen. And when I heard that, I thought, God, that is so simple. It's question number 2. So that's my tip for you. Think about question number 2, and people will feel seen and better appreciated in your organization. And so thank you very much.
Great, Gary.
Daughter just finished her master's degree.
Yeah.
Hot prospect
yes, you
for
did.
hiring special ed teacher.
Well, thank you, Gary. Again, this is, I think, 4, right? 4th year. 4 years, and we appreciate you. I want the board to know that I appreciate all of you to take this opportunity to do this every year. I know that my first couple of years we didn't have this done, and you know we had COVID. But I love the process that we're engaged in every year to look at not only just the handbook, but also to come and do some team building. I think that's so important, and especially right now, you saw the words UNITY, unity, and teamwork, and that's important. I just hope you feel that, you know, the staff here, we're here together as a team, but we're here to serve, to support the mission and the goals of the district, and it's where we're at today, and we have a lot of challenges, and they're never going to stop. And it just us together, you know, we can overcome. Because I think it's pretty obvious that all of you, including myself and the staff here, loves this district. We just do. It is. Joanne is a graduate of our district. You know, Tina has served our district 30-something years, and she gets very emotional talking about Colton High. And I'm going to make her cry right now, so I better stop. So it is, and so that's once you know you have individuals that really care about doing the best job possible. And even though we don't get it right all the time, you know, we really reflect on it. I think it just asks ourselves and the board, you know, to continue to stay on and lead. You know, and we would, with confidence, we say that, all of you, and continue to ask all of you to continue to ask us, you know, the tough questions too, you know, just makes us better, because it's not going to get easier out there. I always tell our team here that it's not like it's getting easier, and these jobs just continue to get harder and harder, and being a board member is harder and harder, so it's just what we choose for the calling and that we've been called to. And I believe the callings comes from a higher source and God. And so we're here to support, again, the vision. I'm excited about Vision 2030 and where we're headed. So I do appreciate all of you. And I'm 1 minute over, so I wanted to be done by 5. So I'll stop there. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Board President. Back at
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary, again for guiding us through this process. And I know we're a stronger board for that. And with that, we will adjourn at 5:01.